Have you ever heard of a gang that robbed a bank, and after the police surrounded the place, the gang stipulated that pizza be brought to them so they could eat it, and then they would surrender? The police indeed brought the pizza, and then they stormed the building, only to find an unexpected surprise awaiting them. What happened, you might wonder, and what was the surprising thing that the police found? Watch the video until the end to find out. Welcome everybody to our channel. One day, a person named Fernando Araujo was at his psychiatrist's office. While talking to him, he mentioned that he wanted to rob a bank. The psychiatrist was surprised by this statement and thought that his patient was under the influence of drugs, as Fernando was known for drug use. The psychiatrist asked him, puzzled, "Why do you want to do that? Do you need the money?" Fernando replied, "No, I don't need the money. But, as you know, I'm an artist and I love art. I believe robbing a bank would be a great artistic act." The doctor further inquired about how he planned to do it, to which Fernando answered that he hadn't decided yet but that the idea was constantly on his mind. The doctor didn't pay much attention to Fernando's words and considered them drug-induced ramblings. But was Fernando's talk really empty words? Let's continue the story. Fernando used to roam the streets of the Argentine capital Buenos Aires every day, looking for a suitable bank to rob. He eventually found a bank in an upscale area called Banco Rio, known for being where the wealthy and famous deposited their money. It was a bank full of riches. He then started thinking about ways to rob this bank. Two ideas came to his mind. The first idea was to conduct an armed robbery while the bank was open, steal the money, and escape before the police arrived. However, this plan was extremely dangerous, and the loot would be minimal. The second idea, which promised much larger profits, was to dig an underground tunnel leading to the bank's vault and enter when the bank was closed. Yet, this approach was very challenging due to the bank's advanced alarm systems and thermal sensors. After deep consideration, Fernando chose the second approach and began thinking about how to dig the tunnel. One day, while wandering the city streets, he noticed a series of continuous sewer openings on the street where the bank was located. He realized that this indicated the presence of a sewer tunnel in that area. He followed these openings until he reached the sewer outlet, which was close to Banco Rio, approximately 150 meters away. Fernando then entered the sewer outlet to explore the tunnels. He found them to be very large, with a diameter of about 6 meters, making them suitable for tunneling. Subsequently, he started assembling a team to assist him in the robbery. He went to his friend Sebastian Bolster, known for his expertise in electronics and mechanics, and asked him to join him in robbing the bank. Sebastian was surprised by his friend's request, as he knew Fernando wasn't a gangster or someone with a criminal record. However, after hearing the plan, Sebastian was convinced to join to him, also motivated by his family's history with banks. They had lost a significant amount of money when the banking system collapsed in Argentina at some point. They went to the sewer tunnel that Fernando had discovered and began to identify a suitable location to dig a tunnel leading to the bank vault. Fernando used measuring tapes to determine their distance from the surface. Afterward, they went to the bank to gather more information they needed. They took photos without anyone noticing and even managed to descend to the vault, gaining general view into its layout and the number of safety deposit boxes present. However, their information was only rough estimates and not accurate enough. They required architectural schematics of the bank building. Sebastian, the mechanical and electronics expert, required funds to create the necessary tools for the heist. Then, they decided to involve a person with expertise in heists. Fernando contacted an unidentified individual for help, explaining their plan and the need for assistance. This person introduced them to Beto de la Torre, an expert in weapons and gang operations. Beto agreed to help them organize the heist. Then Fernando informed him that they needed money in order to carry out the heist. Then Beto assured them that he could provide the necessary funds by selling a truck he owned. Then he officially joined them. However, Fernando still believed they needed another person to join them in order to complete the team. The unidentified individual introduced him to someone who had been involved in gang activities in the past and had significant experience in heists. This individual had spent 15 years in one of the most dangerous prisons and was known for his cunning and deception skills. His name was Luis Silanes. Luis joined them, completing the group. The group began discussing the details of the plan. They revisited the sewer tunnels and observed the measurements taken by Fernando and Sebastian earlier to pinpoint the ideal location for the tunnel leading to the bank's vault. However, due to the lack of accurate blueprints of the bank building, their measurements were not precise enough. Luis Silanes informed them that he could obtain the necessary blueprints to refine their plan. This surprised his companions, and they asked how he can do it. Lewis assured them not to worry about the details, he would take care of it. And somehow, he was able to procure the blueprints. With the accurate blueprints in hand, they performed meticulous calculations and determined the exact location for digging. They also calculated the length of the tunnel they would dig and the angle at which it would slope. They gathered the required excavation equipment, and they began digging. During the digging process, one of them stayed at the surface to ensure that the noise didn't reach the street above. The digging process took an extremely long time. Despite their progress, a significant challenge remained: the bank's thermal sensors and alarm systems. Fernaldo contemplated a solution and came up with the idea of creating suits using sleeping bags to mask their body heat from the thermal sensors. He even drew up designs for these suits. However, these suits weren't foolproof and might not completely hide their body heat. If the alarm went off and alerted the bank's security, they would be in serious trouble. Then, Fernaldo stumbled upon a remarkable idea that no one could have anticipated. The idea was that instead of using the tunnel they were digging to enter the bank, they would utilize it for their escape. The new plan involved storming the bank with weapons through the front door, conducting the heist, and then making their escape through the tunnel. In this scenario, the alarm bells or thermal sensors wouldn't matter. Fernaldo was overjoyed by the idea that had crossed his mind. He then searched online for a similar concept but found nothing. This indicated that the police wouldn't likely have any knowledge of their plan. He proceeded to share this new plan with his friends, and they were greatly impressed by it. Beto de la Torre took charge of securing the weapons, as this new plan required firearms. He secured very distinctive weapons. Watch the video until the end to find out why these weapons are unique. After nearly a whole year of preparation, they completed their arrangements and finished digging the tunnel. They also built a small dam within the sewers. This was because they intended to use inflatable boats to carry their loot and escape. The dam would raise the water level, facilitating the movement of the boats. As for their escape route, they avoided using the same tunnel entrance they will use to access the bank due to the possibility of police detection. Instead, they chose the opposite direction and planned to exit through another sewer opening not too far away. To execute this, they decided to bring a small truck. They would then create a hole in its floor, large enough for a person to pass through. The plan involved parking the truck over the sewer opening they intended to escape through, allowing them to flee using it. Then, Beto de la Torre brought a small truck as they had planned. He took it to his garage, and then he and the members of the gang began to create an opening in the floor of the truck, just as they had agreed. While they were working, Beto's wife unexpectedly entered the garage, causing them to fear their secret being revealed. However, Beto reassured them and assured them that his wife wouldn't expose them. After that, they recruited another person to join them in order to drive the truck. With all these preparations in place, there was still another problem to solve. It is how to open as many safe deposit boxes in the bank as quickly as possible. To address this issue, Sebastian Bolster, the expert in mechanics and electronics, designed a hydraulic device capable of breaking open the locks of the safe deposit boxes in record time. It could break a lock in just 7 minutes. And so, the preparations for the biggest heist in the history of Argentina were officially completed. On January 13, 2006, they began executing the operation. Sebastian Bolster entered the sewer system and then proceeded to the tunnel they had dug. He reached behind the bank's vault and waited for a signal from his accomplices. There were also rubber boats near the entrance of the tunnel they had dug, intended for their escape. Fernaldo, Beto, and Luis were stationed outside near the bank's entrance. They stormed into the bank with their weapons, ordering everyone to lie down on the ground and taking them as hostages. The bank's security guard locked himself in the surveillance room and contacted the police. Within minutes, the police arrived and surrounded the area. Fernaldo then executed a plan he had prepared in advance to deceive the police into believing that their intention was to escape through the front door. He took one of the hostages outside and returned to the bank. This made it seem as if the gang was planning to escape through the door. In this way, the police believed that the gang was planning to escape through the front door and that they were completely surrounded with no way to escape. Inside the bank, the gang had full control over the premises except for the surveillance room where the security guard was located. This posed a significant problem, as the guard could potentially see their movements through the surveillance cameras and report their escape plans to the police, jeopardizing the entire operation. After numerous negotiations with the guard, which proved fruitless, Luis took one of the hostages and placed the gun to her head, threatening the guard that if he didn't comply, he would shoot her. Seeing the distressed hostage and hearing her pleas to see her daughter, the guard finally relented and came out. Louis took the guard's phone and led him to the exit, releasing him. At that moment, Fernaldo descended into the vault. Then he had given the signal to Sebastian to start digging into the wall of the vault. Simultaneously, Fernaldo was moving aside a cabinet of drawers that was on the same wall. Afterward, Sebastian entered through a hole in the wall and brought with him the hydraulic device he had crafted. He began to open the safety deposit boxes one by one, as they had agreed upon previously, aiming to unlock as many as possible within a span of 2 hours. Meanwhile, Louis Selanes, who I mentioned earlier as being cunning and skilled in deception, was engaging in delaying tactics with the police in order to gain more time. He spoke with the police calmly and confidently. The police commander, monitoring him through binoculars, was taken aback by Louis's behavior. Then he inquired about their demands, to which Louis responded with composure, "We initially intended to rob the bank quietly, and then escape. However, you arrived quickly and surrounded the place. Now we're unsure of what to do." Louis's calm and nonchalant demeanor led the police commander to suspect that he wasn't an ordinary person but rather an expert in heists. While the police commander pondered this, Louis interrupted him and said, "Listen, I've been imprisoned for 15 years and was released not too long ago. This isn't my first time pulling off a robbery. I'm well acquainted with all your tactics and tricks. I advise you not to play games with me, as it might jeopardize the safety of the hostages we're holding." The police commander responded that they wouldn't resort to any tricks and requested him to release one of the hostages continuously. Louis answered in a composed manner, "Haven't we already released the guard? Why are you so greedy? Don't you realize that greed is not good? So, don't ask for the release of hostages. We'll decide when to release them." Then he abruptly ended the call. Then, Louis continued to stall the police by asking them various things each time, including requesting them to contact his lawyer to negotiate surrender terms, and he gave them the phone number of one of the hostages, telling them it was his lawyer's number. When the police called the number, Louis answered in a different tone voice, claiming to be the lawyer coming to negotiate terms. After this prolonged stalling, 2 hours had passed, and yet Fernaldo and Sebastian couldn't open all the safety deposit boxes. They managed to open 147 out of 400 boxes due to issues with the hydraulic machine that Sebastian had built. Nonetheless, despite these setbacks, they had pulled off a significant heist. Fernaldo then called Louis and informed him that they needed to initiate their escape. Louis subsequently contacted the police, stating their intention to surrender, but with a condition: they wanted to have a meal before doing so. He requested a quantity of pizza, enough for both them and the hostages, and specified a particular restaurant located far from the bank. This restaurant choice was all part of the stalling tactic. The police agreed to his request and went to get pizza. Following this, communication between Louis and the police went silent. Louis and Bito instructed the hostages to keep their heads down on the ground. They threatened that anyone who lifted their head would be shot immediately. Then they joined Sebastian and Fernaldo, who were collecting the stolen goods and placing them in bags. These bags were then thrown into the tunnel, which led downwards where the rubber boats were waiting. Before fleeing, they left their weapons in the vault and covered the hole in the wall with a cabinet of drawers that was there. They also placed a bomb in the hole. They descended to the boats, which were tied together nearby. They loaded stolen items into one boat and got into the other, and then they swiftly navigated through the sewer system under the small truck. Then they exited the sewer opening and climbed directly into the small truck through the opening in its floor. Then, they sped away to house they had prepared beforehand for hiding. Upon their arrival, they drove the small truck to garage and brought the stolen goods into the house. They then turned on the TV to find out what had happened after their escape. They discovered that the police were still surrounding the bank and hadn't entered it yet. They sat down to watch and follow the news, feeling happy. During this time, the police had brought the pizzas requested by Louis. They attempted to contact him, but received no response. They decided to storm the bank. Indeed, they forcefully entered the bank, only to find the hostages. They searched the vault but found no one inside. They believed that the thieves were among the hostages. Then they evacuated them from the bank. After an intensive search, they managed to find the opening behind the drawer cabinet. However, there was a bomb there. They called the bomb disposal unit to deal with it. They found that the bomb wasn't real. Additionally, they found the weapons that the robbers had used and left behind. Surprisingly, the weapons weren't real either. This meant that the gang had staged the bank heist with fake weapons. At this time, the thieves were dividing the stolen goods among themselves, which amounted to approximately $19 million. After that, they agreed that each member would take their share and go their ways, never to meet again. Afterward, each of them went on their own path. Beto de la Torre returned to his home and celebrated with his children and his wife, who was aware of the robbery. One day, Beto noticed that one of the money bags had a shortage. He questioned his wife about it and asked if she took some of the money. She admitted to taking some of it. This angered Beto greatly as he wanted to avoid drawing attention to himself. They had a heated argument, and afterwards, he took the money bags and went to another location to hide them. However, his wife was very angry with him. She went to the police and reported him. Beto was subsequently arrested, and he underwent questioning to determine who else were involved in the robbery. He refused to confess, but after intense investigations conducted by the detectives, they managed to apprehend Fernando Araujo, Sebastian Balzar, and Luis Solanes. Luis was apprehended in Uruguay. In other words, all 4 thieves were captured. However, the stolen goods were not recovered as they refused to disclose their locations. They were sentenced to varying terms between 9 and 15 years. Later on, they received reduced sentences due to the fact that the robbery was carried out with fake weapons, which meant it was not an armed robbery, and their good behavior during imprisonment. Fernando and Sebastian spent around 2 years in the prison before being released. They were also put under house arrest for 2 years. On the other hand, Luis spent 6 years in prison, while Beto spent 8 years because they had previous records. And now, we have reached the end of the video. This was the story of the largest heist in the history of Argentina. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and let us know what surprised you the most in this story. Don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends.